going on right now. There's a report on how well we're implementing the Anti-Bribery Convention. There's a report on Slovenia, right, who clearly, as of 3/18/2021, is having troubles reducing corruption in its country. All right. You see that it's based on competition. The OECD fights bribery. Now, it does other things too, as you'll see by the coronavirus. This is one of the organizations where the industrialized nations are trying to get together to get COVID vaccine out to other countries. But we're focused on the anti-bribery aspects. All right, and so we see their regional programs, right? We see there's monitoring. Let's see how well the United States is implementing. Okay, so this is 11/17/2020. This report details the U.S. achievements and challenges in respect to implementation and enforcement of the convention. Let's read the news release. Okay, how are we doing? So the working group just completed phase 4 of the U.S. implementation of the convention. Given developments since the U.S. last evaluation, the working group made a range of recommendations to the U.S. Let's see what we need to be doing. Consider ways to enhance protections for whistleblowers. Okay, that seems important. And I'm wondering how much of, from an international perspective, how much corruption and bribery increased in the United States recently, in more recent times. What else do we need to do? We need to continue to evaluate and refine our policies. We need to make publicly available for foreign bribery matters, as well as the grounds for extending DPAs. I need to find out what DPA is. I cannot believe my ignorance here. Evaluate the effectiveness of the corporate enforcement policy in terms of encouraging self-disclosure and the deterrent effect on foreign bribery, and continue to address recidivism through appropriate sanctions, meaning that our companies bribe again. Okay, so we have a sustained commitment, right? And so that's good. That looks good for us. But let's see what else goes on with us. We have positive developments, right? Our Department of Justice is relying on several theories of liability to hold companies and individuals responsible for foreign bribery, because we have to prosecute it, right? That's part of the implementation. If there are no cases brought, what use is it having a beautifully worded statute and convention, right? It's like having a code of ethics that you don't follow at all. It looks beautiful on the website. Okay, so you can find out everything about how we're doing in terms of how we are implementing and enforcing it, including what legal and who would prosecute bribery cases. Our Department of Justice in the federal government. Okay, so now the U.S. has successfully coordinated multi-agency resolutions against alleged offenders in FCPA matters. In parallel, the U.S. has increasingly sought to coordinate and cooperate in investigating and resolving multi-jurisdictional foreign bribery. Do you see how Siemens would be multi-jurisdictional? First of all, there's all the countries in which it was operating, like the US, like Germany, where it's headquartered, like the European Union. Then there was all the countries in which it was paying the bribes. So how does this, how do we as a global organization here, how do we ensure that there are steps taken to make sure that we're working together on this? Okay. So you can see we just have this recent let's see if there's any summary of at the beginning of the page 4 report. Oh, this is going to be, whoa. This is going to be intense. I'm not holding you responsible. All you need to know about this is that we were recently evaluated by the OECD in regard to our implementation and enforcement. And when you think of the word enforcement, that means prosecution of bribe payers by the Department of Justice. Okay, so let's see if there's any intro here. Wow. People have put a lot of effort into writing a long document, that I will say. Okay, so let's see here. All right, so here we are, phase 4. Okay, it makes recommendations for us. It was adopted by the 44 members of the OECD Working Group on Bribery. So there must be 44 signatories now. Okay, it's the 4th phase of monitoring, okay, of the United States. Launched in 2016, it looks at the evaluated country's particular challenges and positive achievements. It explores issues such as detection, enforcement, corporate liability, and international cooperation. All right, so this is quite detailed, but it's just to give you the idea. So let's see in the table of contents here, right? Reporting foreign bribery, the ability of U.S. foreign missions to detect and report foreign bribery, U.S. anti-money laundering. I wrote a long 100-page paper on money laundering. Oh my gosh, my mind boggles to think I had that energy once in my life. So look at all the things that they're looking at. Whistleblower protections, right? So this is detection. How are we doing on that? How are we doing on enforcement? How are we doing on holding corporations liable? Look at the accounting requirements as I talked to you about, right? And the scope of corporate liability, not just the individual bribe payer, but the corporation itself. So this is just to give you an idea. Any questions on this? You just need to be responsible for what? For the fact that this report was issued in late 2020. Let's see what our positive achievements were. Why not go to that? Oh, now I don't want to see tables. Oh my God, my mind boggles. Okay, so I'm quizzing you on this table. Get ready. Okay, so conclusion. Let's see what our conclusion is. Oh, I see now what some of these things are, but I just want to see conclusion. Accounting requirements. So it probably sums up all of this. Okay, I see. All right. Okay. You know, these people love acronyms like the NPA, the DPA, you are not responsible for any of these. It looks like Ralph Lauren was not behaving too well. They must have been paying some bribes. They are specifically listed here. We have definitely imposed more fines. Okay, good. Multi-jurisdictional resolutions, more and more. As we are, you know, global multinational businesses, we're going to have multi-jurisdictional, which means it's occurring in many different legal systems of different countries. Okay. We have joined France and the United Kingdom to resolve foreign bribery. Okay. And violations with Airbus. So remember in the Boeing case where Airbus looked so innocent compared to corrupt Boeing? Well, when we get into other areas of the law, maybe not quite so innocent, okay? So there was $4 billion paid in regard to bribes paid by Airbus, okay? And let's see. Oh, yeah. The largest corporate monetary sanctions imposed during the relevant period was $1 billion in the 2018 Petrobras case. Yes. So, okay. All right, so that gives you that idea. Let me stop share with this, and we will go back to sharing our PowerPoints. Okay. So I'm going to modify this because we're going to talk, I'm holding you responsible for the report in 2020. So I will change this. But as of that time, a number of countries were not implementing. So they were signatories to the treaty or convention prohibiting bribery to government officials, but only France, Germany, and the US were doing well in enforcement. And you can see that periodically the convention itself gets updated. Now, in 1998, we had to modify, so you are responsible for this, our Foreign Corrupt Practices Act. Why? It had to comply with the convention. And so there were some changes that we had to make. Expanded jurisdiction, definition of public official to include the World Bank. People were paying the World Bank officials bribes to get the loans. And then other amendments. So you're just responsible for the fact that we updated our statute so that it was in compliance with the OECD convention. I will add a slide on the 2020 report that we just saw. All right. Any questions generally about the OECD? And it's important that you know about these kinds of organizations and about how international law functions and how international corruption, which is such a huge problem, how we are attempting to address this. We in the industrialized world that tend to pay the bribes. All right, now, one other organization I want you to know about. Transparency International. Frequently, and in my papers way back when, I would discuss the 3 pillars needed to combat corruption in international business transactions. What were the 3 pillars? Number 1, business, right? They pay the bribes. I'll add a slide for this too. Let me see something here. I'm going to do the 3 pillars in a slide. And I'm going to update the 2020 report. Okay. You'll have 2 new slides before I post this. Okay. Civil society, right? So we have, okay, business that pays the bribes, governments of developing nations that take the bribes, and the third component of fighting corruption as a global society is, quote, civil society. And these are non-governmental organizations that focus on advocacy in regard to a specific issue. Transparency International focuses on advocacy, leading the fight against corruption. So while OECD is multilateral, it's governments signing a treaty. Transparency International is non-governmental. It is civil society, all right? And they create a corruption perception index. So they list all the countries of the world and they complete this scientific analysis and come up with the results in a corruption perception index. Now, you will love this, right? So the poor African countries, they're at the bottom. They are seen as very corrupt. So they don't even try and like say, no, we should be higher up. They say, we should not be last. that other African countries should be last. They're worse than we are. So there's like this race to the bottom, as they call it, right? And so, no, that's not the point. You're missing the whole point. All right. So let's stop share here. And I'm going to share with you. Where is the Transparency International negotiation? Here we are. So you need to look at this website too. All right. So you see this is a global, national, and local effort, right? We advocate, it's an advocacy organization, a non-governmental advocacy organization for anti-corruption policy on a global level through engaging with high-level policy makers, such as the Group of 20, and the Group of 20 is 20 of the industrialized nations. You'll see periodically our president will go to meetings of the Group of 20, and our investigations into grand corruption. Grand, I'm impressed. I haven't seen a definition of what makes grand corruption rather than corruption. Nationally, we combat corruption on a national level through our regional chapters pushing legislation, so they're lobbying for anti-corruption measures, and actively engaging with key government ministries. And local, we work with individuals and organizations against corruption on a local level by pushing cases through our 60+ advocacy and legal centers. So they're providing resources, right, as a non-governmental organization. All right, so make sure you know that global, national, and local efforts. Now, let's see who we are, okay? Oh no, I don't want that. Back. No, I don't want to subscribe. I want to go back here. No. Okay, we're going to try again.
Professor, you can just press the X on the side and it'll take it down.
I'm so sorry. Yeah. Thank you. Yes. All right, we're going to go back and see if we can get back into it. Otherwise, hopefully some part of this is still open. No. All right. Well, we'll pick up a bit here next time, but I do want you to go to both the OECD website and the Transparency International website. Okay. Sometimes I amaze myself, not in a good way. Okay, anyway, with that said, who can tell me, as we're summarizing, what is the difference between the OECD and Transparency International?
The OECD is the like governmental organization, and the Transparency International is a civil organization.
Okay, did everyone hear that, right? The OECD is composed of governments. So it's a governmental organization, but it's a governmental organization of the governments of a number of countries that get together in order to become signatories on treaties that combat international business corruption. The amount of money that is lost, and both the OECD and Transparency International have statistics on the amount of money that's lost to international business corruption every year. We could use that money to help people in Africa really get the infrastructure that they need, get the power that they need, get the clean drinking water that is their humanitarian right. So, there's a lot of benefit if you think And then the Transparency International, as Angelina said, right? It's a non-governmental civil organization that's an advocacy group to combat bribery. But this is very, very important, and there will 100% be questions about this. Now, what is their similarity? They're both attempting to do what? Why do they exist?
To combat bribery.
They're
And look
both
into it.
attempting to combat bribery, specifically between international business corporations and government officials. We can call it developing nations, poorer nations, where often we see a lot of corruption. All right. So one last thing before we go, I wanted to go back and show you something else on the OECD. Let's see if we can get back here. All right, you guys, so what do I close? I want to go back out of this and into this. Let's try this. Okay, all right, good, okay. Now, let's see where else I want to go. Let's look at countries. Let's look at us. Where are we? T, U, Z. No. Oh, let's see what comes up here. Okay. Okay. I think this is important because even though it's not specifically on the concept of bribery, right? It's like I said to you last time about the COVID, right? We don't eliminate COVID, even if we vaccinated every person in the United States, unless everyone is protected in Mexico and other countries. How do we function as a global society where we were traveling to one another's countries all the time when we have this problem of COVID, right? So here we're talking about, right, COVID recovery packages in OECD countries and partner economies, and that they should be environmentally positive. I don't know if you saw, what was I just watching where some reading or watching something where, I mean, the landscape is going to be full of this by 2030, right? We're moving more and more away. And even China is beginning to move away from coal-fired power plants, which create so much challenge in terms of the environment. All right, let's see more of about. Okay, and take a look at this, right? Okay, so it tells you, right, international organization, right, that builds better policies for better lives. Now, it's specifically, of course, for our purposes, we focused on the anti-bribery conventions, but it has other conventions and other ways. Look at, there's the guy from Virgin Orbit, right? We all know him. Okay, so what does it do? It wants to shape policies that foster prosperity, equality, opportunity, and well-being for all, right? They try and work with governments, policymakers, and citizens, meaning like Transparency International and other citizen organizations, on establishing evidence-based international standards and finding solutions together to a range of social, economic, and environmental challenges. They fight international tax evasion, right? And they fight, right, corruption and bribery in international business transactions. So, I mean, this is really important. This is the world of tomorrow. You're the leaders of tomorrow. You're going to be dealing in this world, right? So we can see, look at the map, who are members and partners, right? Let's view member come. Okay, there we all are. So if you're doing business and you know you're going into a foreign country, right? You would look to see, is that foreign country a signatory, a member of the OECD convention? And notice that generally speaking, right, Slovenia is not a necessarily developed nation fully. Colombia, we're trying to get involved the nations where the bribes are paid, right? Okay. Combating international tax avoidance, right? That's once again a huge, huge waste of resources that could be used, right? And so let's just take a minute, 1 second, and then I will let you go, right? They inform and advise, they engage and influence, they set standards, all right, and such as the various conventions. Everything is about getting countries and people to collaborate, collaboration. Okay, so I hope I gave you some food for thought. I will modify a couple of these slides and I will post them for you. Groups 1 and 2, remember that you are in the group presentation instructions supposed to send me your PowerPoint or whatever type of presentation materials you have created, which is part of how I grade you by the morning before class. Is everybody clear on that? Okay. Well, I'm looking forward very much to seeing what you find out in these cases and to your presentations and so forth. And thank you for really humoring me today in terms of introducing you to these